my relationship with Robyn hasn't been affected by these other relationships.
For years, Robyn Brown was the serene, quiet wife, the peacemaker, the victim, the crybaby when things fell apart. To the public eye, she was the good wife, the one attempting to hold Kody's polygamous family together while everybody else, in her opinion, strayed away. Behind that smile, behind those strategically placed tears, though, was a plan. A scheme that started the instant she stepped into the Brown fold. And now, with years of deception, manipulation, and emotional game-chessing, that scheme has finally blown up in her face. It didn't happen overnight. It wasn't a single argument, one betrayal, or one secret that destroyed it. It was a pattern. Tiny fractures in the image Robyn went to such great lengths to safeguard. Fans had been hunching for years that she wasn't merely another wife hoping to survive Kody's drama. She was the mastermind behind it, the unseen force controlling his choices, steering his allegiances, and shielding him from the rest of his wives. Christine noticed it first. Long before the tears, before the cameras rolled on the last goodbye, Christine began to notice a change. Kody was constantly at Robyn's house. Each conversation centered on her needs, her emotions, her definition of keeping the family together. And somehow, each time Robyn spoke of being united, the family became more fragmented. Robyn wrote herself up as victim in early interviews, the woman who just wanted everyone to get along. But observers noticed the trend. When there was tension between Kody and another wife, Robyn was always there, softly sympathizing with him, explaining to him how much he was misunderstood, how the other wives didn't respect his leadership, how much work he did for a family that didn't value him. Those discussions weren't filmed, but insiders say they led to everything that followed. The breakup happened when Christine finally said she'd had enough. Enough of favoritism, enough of playing games, enough of living a double life where Kody coexisted with Robyn and another one with the rest of them. The day Christine left wasn't the dissolution of a marriage. It was the start of the truth unfolding. But let's back up, because this tale doesn't begin with Christine being left behind. It begins years before, with a scheme Robyn believed she had the reins on. When Robyn initially became part of the family, she was a single mother. She introduced warmth, vitality, and new romance to Kody's life. To the other wives, Mary, Janelle, and Christine, it appeared as if something new. What they did not see, however, was that Kody was not marrying Robyn. He was constructing a new base, one centered strictly around her. Gradually, the dynamic changed. Financial choices once made as a family were now being funneled elsewhere. New LLCs and joint accounts materialized, according to court documents and family sources, with Robyn's name at the helm. Kody spent most evenings at Robyn's house, and when the wives objected, he referred to it as a spiritual imbalance. But in reality, it was easier. He was already emotionally lost to them. Christine and Janelle attempted to speak with him. They attempted to rebuild whatever was left. But every time it resulted in the same thing. Kody running back to Robyn, who would coddle him, stroke his ego, and remind him that they just don't get your role as the head. And that's where the plan started to come undone. Because the more Robyn attempted to manipulate the show, the more evident it was that she wasn't repairing the family. She was completing it. Behind the scenes, producers had begun to notice something too. Robyn's tears were staged. Her meltdowns were on script. She'd reside neatly in the middle of each dramatic plot, sobbing, consoling, then subtly nudging the plot towards her. And it held up initially. The fans sympathized with her. Kody thought it all to be true. But as years passed, the viewers began to realize. They began questioning of finances, favoritism, and manipulation. Then the suit arrived. Christine and Janelle's resistance to financial manipulation and emotional manipulation. When those documents reached the courtroom, all Robyn had worked for began to unravel. For the first time, she wasn't dictating the narrative. Attorneys introduced proof of funds transferred from family accounts into personal businesses associated with Robyn and Kody. There were discrepancies in pay, unexplained payments, and The most astonishing, a company they had listed under their initials, K&R Holdings LLC, the same firm which allegedly paid their nanny, Mindy Jessup, an $80,000 salary a year when Janelle didn't even have enough money to construct her house at Coyote Pass. Within the courtroom, Robyn's facade crumbled. Lost was the steady, shaking voice. Lost were the expertly practiced tears. This was a woman stripped bare, her scheme revealed. And when the lawyer for Christine and Janelle put the nanny, Robyn's own niece, on the stand, everything was different. Mindy testified under oath, verifying what had long been suspected by fans. Robyn and Kody had constructed a completely separate financial universe. Funds intended for the family were diverted. Trips were paid for. Luxury goods were bought. All while Christine and Janelle were informed the family couldn't even pay for minimal expenses. It was, as one source characterized, the day the illusion broke. Robyn's strategy had been straightforward. Build loyalty through dependency. She thought that if Kody was dependent on her for peace, for comfort, for the appearance of control, she could keep him. And she did. For years she held him in a cocoon of guilt and rationalization, but what she hadn't anticipated was that the other wives would one day find their strength, not in Kody, but in each other. Christine's departure emboldened Janelle. Janelle's autonomy motivated Mary to finally realize through the lies. Each of Robyn's walls came tumbling down, one by one. And the moment that clinched her destiny was when Kody himself, cornered and cornered, looked at her and breathed quietly. You said they'd never discover. That statement, in the judgment of witnesses in the courtroom, rang out louder than the gavel. It wasn't a confession, it was confirmation. Robyn's scheme, the manipulation over the years, the web of emotion, had finally turned on her. But that was only the start. Because after that day, something remarkable happened. Kody started to fall apart. Out in the open, emotionally. The man who thought he was invincible began to fall apart in public, and what happened next would change the sister wives saga forever. The next day after courtroom mayhem, Flagstaff was different. For the first time, the facade of control that Kody and Robyn had constructed for more than a decade began to crumble. What was once an image-perfect image of family harmony now stood cracked and broken. Within their home, the silence hung heavy, the kind of silence that only comes after truth explodes like a bomb. Kody straddled the edge of the couch, his palms together, his eyes bloodshot but not from crying, from anger. He was not accustomed to being out of control of the story. For years, he had been the focal point of everything, the head of the household, the voice of reason, the star of the story. When something went wrong, he always had someone else to blame. Christine's betrayal, Janelle's disrespect, Mary's emotional distance. But now, with financial records exposed and testimony that painted him as a manipulator, he had nowhere left to turn. Robyn attempted to soothe him, speaking the same phrases she always had. "They distorted everything," she murmured. "They made us appear to be villains." But the issue was, this time, even Kody couldn't be certain she was unfairly treated. He felt the ground change around him. Over the days that followed, production crews began to spill what they had been keeping under wraps. A few sound bites emerged, not broadcast footage, but intimate recordings overheard by crew members amid volatile situations. These were the unbridled, uncensored glimpses into Kody's disintegration, the sort of content TLC wouldn't dream of airing. In one of the recordings, you could hear Kody's voice shaking with rage, slapping his hand on a table. "You all think I'm the bad guy," he yelled. "You think I wanted this family to implode? They turned my wives on me." But the moment that left everyone stunned was a few seconds later, when he spoke under his breath, almost to himself. "I thought Robyn said this would solve everything." That sentence struck the fandom like a brushfire. It wasn't frustration, it was acknowledgement. Kody had just officially agreed, in his own words, that Robyn wasn't the innocent victim she seemed on television. She was complicit, the one who had convinced him that control was stability, isolation was loyalty. For Janelle and Christine, that tape was no shock. It was verification. Christine had cautioned all those years ago that Kody was being manipulated by a master who knew precisely how to get to him. Someone who played the long game. And that someone was Robyn. Behind the scenes, the other wives opened up more. For years, they'd remained quiet in fear. Fear of retribution. Fear of fracturing the family. Fear of angering Kody. But with the court case out in the open and the media uncovering more, the reality was no longer hiding in hushed tones. Janelle broke the silence in an interview. Sitting quietly opposite a reporter, she stated, "I believe Robyn's strategy was to establish peace through control. She believed if everything went through her, the finances, the decisions, the access to Kody, things would remain even. But you can't construct peace on manipulation." Those phrases went viral within an hour. They started calling it Janelle's truth bomb. It wasn't bitter, it wasn't spiteful. It was real. The sort of honesty that packs a punch greater than any manufactured showdown. And whereas Janelle spoke graciously, Christine's voice was filled with feeling. When she was asked whether she ever thought Kody ever loved Robyn, she sighed and answered, "He loved the version of himself he saw through her." That's not love, that's ego. At the same time, in Robyn's house, pressure had been building to a breaking point. Kody was losing sleep, pacing from room to room, grumbling about editing, about betrayal, about how the world was turning against him. But Robyn's silence was more eloquent than his fury. For the first time, she didn't have words to comfort him. And then there was the second leak, a video segment, filmed on a crew member's phone while there was a break from shooting. Kody stands outside, pacing around in circles, his face flushed, voice shaking. "She said we were creating something real," he said, cracking voice. "But all we created was a lie." In the background of the clip, Robyn's voice is barely audible saying, "Don't say that." "Kody, not when they're listening." The one sentence was turned into a meme that went viral. "Not when they're listening" was now the emblem of the mystery that shrouded their marriage. Something that fans used to explain how Robyn was always in the know when cameras were present, always controlling the narrative, always on to how things appeared instead of how they actually were. As days went by, the family's cohesion fell apart more. Mary pulled away completely, shunning interviews, shunning public sightings. Janelle and Christine started filming individually, meeting with producers to capture their lives post-breakup. And Kody? He was sliding, not only from public support, but from reality itself. In one leaked text exchange, passed around by someone who worked closely with the crew, Kody supposedly sent the following message to Robyn. "Everything you predicted would collapse has collapsed. You predicted they would remain silent. You predicted they would never go so far." It was unvarnished, desperate, and exposing. For the first time, viewers witnessed not the patriarch, not the assured man who blustered on leadership and faith, but a man afraid of losing control, not merely of his wives, but of his overall persona. The break came when Christine and Janelle sat down to do a special episode called The Truth We Lived. It wasn't another reunion. It was their time to take back the story. Sitting together, peaceful and centered, they discussed the years of silence, the control, and how love had become a weapon. Christine said something that silenced the studio for a full 10 seconds. "Robyn didn't just take my husband," she said softly. "She took my peace, and now I'm taking it back." Those words became the episode's headline, and from that moment, everything changed. Because whereas Robyn's scheme was intended to cement her future, to secure her place as the wife, Kody would never abandon. Revelation of that scheme did something she could never have anticipated. It brought together the very women she spent years keeping isolated. Christine and Janelle, those once distant and reserved women, now stood firm and purposeful together. They weren't victims anymore. They were survivors of manipulation who were prepared to voice out, but Robyn was not finished. Behind the scenes, she was creating something new, something that would either save her or destroy whatever was left. And when the cameras came back around one final time, she would make a move no one could see coming. The public court had turned against her. Social media was set ablaze for weeks, full of accusations, hashtags, and rumors. Robyn lied, or Kody exposed, or justice for Christine. They dominated the feeds. Flashbacks from past episodes began circulating. The pointed glances, the faked tears, the manner in which Robyn would always have a say for Kody rather than allowing him to speak for himself. It was no longer just public judgment. It was payback. Robyn Brown, the former representative of mercy on Sister Wives, was now the image of manipulation. The woman who had cried about family unity was now being characterized as the one who tore it apart. The pressure was too much, and for the first time in years, Robyn spoke up, unfiltered, uncensored, and on her own terms. When the news fell that Robyn would do a sit-down interview, not with TLC, but with a freelance journalist, the web went wild. Everyone was dying to know what she was going to say. Was she going to come clean? Bounce back? Cry some more? No one had an idea, but one thing was for sure. This interview was going to be life-altering. The atmosphere was cozy, muted, not the flashy network studio production, but a quiet cabin-like room with low lights. Robyn sat facing the interviewer, her body rigid, her hands clenched in her lap. For once, the tears had yet to come. The anticipation between the first question and the second was like a storm that was ready to unleash. The interviewer leaned forward. "Robyn," she started, her voice calm but assertive. "You've been accused of cheating Kody, of alienating him from his family, and even of being involved in financial fraud. What do you have to say to that?" Robyn breathed deeply, her eyes glassy. "People see what they want to see," she said quietly. "I didn't take Kody away from anyone. He made his own decisions. I was just trying to love him." That line was well practiced, the sort of line that reads humble on paper, but falls flat when the world already holds that truth. The interviewer continued to prod. "So, when Christine says that you urged Kody to sever ties with her and Janelle, is she lying?" Robyn's lips pursed. Christine. She was hurt. She didn't get it, being blamed all the time for simply attempting to bring harmony. Kody needed boundaries. The rest of the group didn't respect him. I simply encouraged him to see that. The room fell silent. That line, "I just helped him see that," said it all. She didn't deny it. She confessed, without knowing it, that she had made his choices, that she'd shaped him, that she considered herself the voice of reason and everyone else was a whirlwind. The interviewer didn't budge. She simply asked, "Do you think you went too far?" Robyn blinked, the first tear dropping. "Perhaps," she said softly, "but I did everything I did because I was afraid of losing him." And there it was, the truth hidden within the lie. Robyn's scheme wasn't conceived out of cruelty. It was conceived out of fear of abandonment, fear of not being loved, fear of going back to the isolation she knew before. She believed control was love, and by the time she knew it wasn't, it was already too late. But what Robyn did not realize was that while she was sitting there, apologizing enough to sound sorry but not quite enough to sound guilty, the world was already in motion without her. Christine and Janelle had shot a second season episode that same week, and it wasn't all about healing. It was about truth. During that episode, they aired never-before-seen video, raw behind-the-scenes moments shot on camera during the peak of the family's stress. In one scene, Robyn and Kody sat in their Flagstaff living room, fighting in hushed tones while the mics were still live. Kody's voice was low but menacing. "You said they'd never turn on us," he spit out. Robyn's voice broke. "I didn't think they would. I thought they'd give up." "Give up?" Kody repeated. "They gave up on me because of you." And then there was the line that made headlines for weeks, Robyn's voice, shaking but firm. "I did what I had to do to protect what's mine." That segment was broadcast only hours after her online interview debuted, the worst time possible for her. She had spent close to an hour attempting to rewrite the article, only to have the raw footage spit out the truth she'd attempted to keep hidden. Fans filled the web with side-to-side videos, her subtle denials compared to her audio confessionals. Comments became war zones. Some rallied behind her, saying she was taken out of context, but others referred to her as the architect of the collapse. But it wasn't only the public who had a reaction. Kody did as well. Sources claim that when he watched the raw footage, he shut down. Total silence. He turned off his phone, stopped shooting, and sealed himself in his study for hours. Later, at an off-camera crew recording, he finally had a word to say. "She said she was defending me," he grumbled, pacing the floor. "But all she did was take apart what I made. I didn't need defending. I needed loyalty." Those words were jagged, raw, and painful. Not because they weren't true, but because for the first time, Kody appeared to comprehend the cost of his own obliviousness. While this was going on, Christine and Janelle didn't jubilate. They didn't gloat. They sat silently observing the debacle. Christine whispered to the camera, "I don't believe she's evil. I believe she's broken. But broken people break others if they never confront themselves." The episode concluded with Christine standing at the window, her voice steady but powerful. "She thought she won," she continued. "But when your triumph comes at the expense of everyone who ever loved you, what have you won, really?" By the end of the credits, Robyn's interview had been removed from its source following masses of backlash. The journalist went on to confirm that Robyn had asked that the footage not be reused. But naturally, it was too late. Copies had gone, viral on social media, reaction videos overwhelmed YouTube, and even mainstream media started publishing the headline, "Robyn Brown, the confession that changed everything." Behind closed doors, Robyn attempted to connect with Kody, but the dynamic had changed. He wasn't responding. He wasn't standing up for her. For the very first time in their marriage, Robyn was alone. Really alone. But what she didn't realize yet was the fallout had just begun. The truth she'd attempted to keep hidden was on the verge of growing even larger. Because one of the sister wives possessed something nobody was expecting. Evidence that would rewrite the whole history of their family. And when that evidence emerged, it wouldn't only shatter Robyn's scheme, it would shatter Kody's final defense. The internet was still reeling from Robyn's disastrous interview when the next storm was brewing, quietly, behind closed doors. While Robyn was facing the fallout, and Kody was pulling back into silence, Janelle sat in her office amidst paperwork. To everyone else, it was an ordinary afternoon. Folders stacked high, a laptop, and a worn-out box marked Family Accounts 2014-2021. But what was contained within that box was going to turn everything around. You see, Janelle had always been the practical one, the numbers person. While Christine was taking care of the kids and the emotional aspects of family life, Janelle had always been the one to keep track of the finances, to know where the money went and how it came in. She had asked Kody and Robyn for years to be open with her. For years, she had been assured that everything was under control. Now, looking at the old records before her, she saw how far from reality that comment actually was. Among the records were the old statements of Family Traditions LLC, the joint account the wives had been contributing to for years. But then there were deposits, big ones, which contributed to a separate account, K&R Holdings LLC. The name itself was recognizable, Kody, Nancy, and Robyn. Janelle had briefly noticed it once before on a check stub. But now she had evidence that it wasn't merely a generic business name. It was the explanation for how everything came crashing down. Her hands trembled as she riffled through the statements. "He said the family couldn't afford to construct on Coyote Pass," she breathed. "But this indicates they could have paid cash." The more she read, the lower her heart sank. Transfers masquerading as consulting fees, purchases designated as property expenses, and worst of all, payments into a private account in Robyn's name. Not one, nor two, but dozens, thousands of dollars. When she called Christine, her voice was shaking but firm. "You were right all along," Janelle said. "They weren't broke. They just made sure we were." Christine was silent for a moment. She simply allowed the silence to stand. "Do you have evidence?" she finally spoke. Janelle inhaled deeply. "I have it all." That single sentence set off a chain reaction. Within 24 hours, Christine and Janelle were back in touch with their lawyer. This time, it wasn't just about emotional distress or favoritism. This was about fraud, plain and simple. And when the legal team began combing through the records, what they found went beyond anything the family had imagined. There were business agreements done in Kody's name, but channeled through Robyn's business. There were tax returns that weren't reconciling. And maybe most startling, there were royalty payments from sister wives shows that had been distributed through K&R Holdings rather than the family's shared account. It wasn't merely fiscal mismanagement, it was intentional dishonesty. As news of the findings spread, filming at TLC ground to a halt. The network could no longer turn a blind eye. They summoned an emergency meeting with the Browns' representatives for some answers. But Kody and Robyn failed to appear. Instead, Robyn gave a written statement via a family spokesman a week later. It stated, "Some financial choices were made in private for the long-term safety of our children. Any allegations of fraud or theft are being misrepresented by individuals who no longer share our family values." That comment did not help. Fans were outraged. The press ran with it right away. Headlines blared, "Robyn and Kody under investigation for financial misconduct." And while the legal system crawled, the court of public opinion hurried along. Christine and Janelle, on the other hand, were not partying. They were spent. "It's not about the money," Christine said during a subdued interview. "It's about what the money represents. The lies, the control, the years of being told we were wrong for asking questions." But for Kody, this was the tipping point. He had always taken pride in being the man with all the answers. The husband, the father, the leader. Now, every aspect of that image was crumbling. His wives had left. His children kept their distance. And the one person he had trusted most, of all, Robyn, was now at the epicenter of the devastation. His friends reported that he began to strike out, accusing everyone and everything. "This is the fault of the media," he yelled at one off-camera meeting. "They made everyone hate us. They manipulated the truth." Even as he spoke, though, he knew, in his heart, that the truth had merely been revealed. In a last-ditch effort to get back in control, Robyn proposed one last episode filmed together, a tell-all special, where they could get things out in the open. TLC agreed, trying to save what was left of the show. But nobody could have anticipated what came out when cameras began rolling. The set was minimal, a single round table, 4 chairs, and low, moody lighting. Christine and Janelle sat on one side, Kody and Robyn on the other. The tension was suffocating. Kody started first, his voice trembling with forced calm. "We've made mistakes," he said. "But this family has always been about love, forgiveness, and faith." Christine's reply was quiet but sharp. "Love without honesty isn't love, Kody. It's control." The room fell quiet. Kody stared at her, shocked, but she didn't blink. Janelle leaned forward. "You told us we were family," she said, her voice stern. "But you created a new family without saying anything to us. Financially, emotionally, spiritually. You abandoned us long before we abandoned you." Robyn began to weep, swiping at her face. "I didn't want any of this to happen. I just wanted us to be stable." Christine interrupted her softly. "Stable for whom, Robyn? You? Him? Because the rest of us were flailing while you constructed your safety net." Electricity hung in the air. Even the crew stopped moving. The cameras continued to roll, but nobody breathed. Kody pounded his hand on the table. "You don't know what it's like to be under pressure all the time, to be held responsible for everything." Janelle stared him straight in the eye. "We do know, Kody. We lived it." That was when something within him snapped. The tears fell, but they are not the kind that bring relief. They are the kind that fall when denial at last gives way to reality. For what felt like an eternity, no one spoke. Then Christine was heard from, her voice firm. You used to always say God had called you to create this family. Perhaps he's calling you now to deal with what you've done. Kody turned his face away. Robyn quietly wept at his side. And as the camera pulled back, the four of them sat in silence. A silence that was louder than any admission. But just as the audience believed it was done, the director said softly, "Keep rolling, because what ensued, off script, off guard, would alter the entire narrative." Kody leaned forward and spoke softly to Robyn, unaware that his mic was still hot. "They don't know about the second account, do they?" Robyn stiffened. Her eyes went wide, and in that moment, the whole crew understood. This was not the end. It was the start of something much, much greater. The microphones were live. The cameras continued rolling. But at that moment, no one drew breath. Robyn's eyes flicked to Kody, her face pale. "They don't know about the second account, do they?" 7 words that seemed to hang in the air like a death sentence. The producer froze. The crew looked at each other. Christine and Janelle didn't say a word, but you could sense the tension shifting. They knew what second account was without being told. There was more. More money, more lies, more evidence that everything they had suspected all along was far deeper than they had ever imagined. The silence was so heavy. Robyn attempted to catch up, struggling with her mic. I didn't mean," she stuttered. But it was too late. Damage was done. The sound was already recorded, crystal clear. Christine leaned forward, voice low, shaking. Not with rage, but with realization. "How many accounts, Kody?" she asked. "How much of our lives did you keep hidden?" Kody's expression turned cold. "You don't know the way business is done," he snarled, his voice trembling. "It wasn't stealing, it was strategy. I was guarding whom?" Janelle broke in, her voice growing louder. "Us, the family? Or Robyn and yourself?" Her voice boomed across the set. Even the crew appeared to look down, embarrassed. No script now. No safety net. This was real, raw, and irrevocable. Robyn began to cry again, that racked up, shaking sobs that used to make fans feel sorry for her. But this time there was no pity to be had. Even her tears sounded insincere, memorized. "I didn't want this to happen," she sobbed. "I didn't want to hurt anyone." Christine's eyes welled up with tears as well, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of sadness. "Robyn," she whispered, "you already did." And voila. The years of silence, manipulation, and control fell apart at the seams under the devastation of truth. The secrecy walls built by Kody and Robyn were coming crashing down, live, on camera, to the world. The director whispered to the crew, "Keep filming. Don't cut." Kody's voice rose, urgent now. "You all saints? You think I was the only one with secrets? I gave my all to this family." He rose from his chair, striding about the room, raking his hands through his hair. "I did what I had to do. You all wanted autonomy and you got it. Congratulations, you killed us." Janelle stood also, not backing down. "No, Kody. You ruined us when you chose control over love. When you made money the standard of loyalty. When you became our husband no more and became Robyn's business partner." The air was electric with tension. Robyn attempted to take Kody's hand, but he jerked free. He was lost, angry, embarrassed, and trapped altogether. For the first time, Kody Brown, the man who had constructed a fortune out of his persona of strength, seemed small. Christine inhaled deeply. "You know what the saddest thing is?" she murmured. "We still would have forgiven you, if you'd just been honest with us." Kody's gaze leaped to hers. "You wouldn't have forgiven me. You just wanted rid of me." Christine moved her head. "No, you made yourself gone a long time before we did." The hang of her words hung there, heavy and absolute. Then, without saying another thing, Christine stood up. Janelle did the same. The two women killed their microphones, put them down in a tidy pile on the table, and started walking towards the door. Kody yelled after them, his voice cracking. "Christine, no! Don't—" She halted but didn't turn back. We already did this once, Kody, she replied. This time you can't gaslight your way out of it. And with that, they left, leaving Kody and Robyn by themselves under the bright studio lights. The cameras continued rolling as Robyn buried her face in her hands and cried quietly. Kody stood frozen, looking at the door they had just exited, his chest expanding and contracting with deep breaths. You could almost sense the thoughts whizzing through his head, the regret, the fear, the awareness that his empire of control had finally turned to dust. And then there was a distant noise, the producer speaking in the control room. "We have the footage," he said. "It's all of it." Kody spun around from the sound booth, his face changing from despair to alarm. "You can't broadcast that," he said, shaking. "You can't broadcast any of that." But the producer didn't answer. Outside the studio building, Christine and Janelle stood in the chilly night air together, in silence. Christine breathed a sigh. "It's over," she said. Janelle nodded. "Not yet," she whispered. "Not until everyone understands what actually happened." Christine stared at her, puzzled. "What do you mean?" Janelle paused, then fished into her bag. She pulled out a small black USB drive and handed it to Christine. Christine stared at it, her brows knotting. "What is this?" Janelle's voice was calm. "The second account." Christine's breath seemed to catch. "You have evidence?" Janelle nodded slowly. "All of it. Every transfer, every withdrawal, every name. I didn't show it to the lawyers yet. I wanted you to see it first." Christine clutched the drive in her hand, the tiny object heavy with verity. She gazed up at Janelle, her voice shaking. This changes everything," Janelle smiled weakly, wearily. "It always does." The camera went to black, but their voices remained. Christine. "So now what?" Janelle. "We complete what they began." Silence for a moment. Then, very softly, the ping of a notification. An email arrived. The screen flashed back on for only long enough to display the subject line, "Confidential. KN&R holding subpoena, recently recovered files." The image went still.